here with you all. It's wonderful to see all your faces in my computer screen. So I won't spend too much time talking today, but my thinking is that, you know, we have this fabulous experience at our regional meetings where we come together and we experience and learn together and meet the speaker. And then we go off on our holidays and our summers and our busy lives, and we don't have opportunity to interact with the material sort of immediately after the event. And then we kind of get a little distance from it and lose touch with it a bit. And so I wanted us early in the fall to have an opportunity to interact again with Jacqui to give us greater access to the experience that we had together in June. So that's my thinking behind gathering us together today with Jacqui. And before we get started, I'm going to turn things over to Deborah just to open up our time together.
Thank you, Treena. Welcome, everyone. It is so wonderful to see so many of you. And I'm beginning to recognize names and faces, so that's always a good thing.
Deborah, just your screen is black.
Oh,
there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, it's so wonderful to see so many of you and for us to get together again. And let us start first by acknowledging the traditional lands on which we live. We live in a beautiful area of the world, wherever you are, in BC or the Yukon or where Jacqui is in the United States. We live on traditional lands that we need to continue to cherish and to hold dear and to be good stewards of those lands, and to remember that we must be thinking of future generations and how they will live on these lands. And I'm coming to you from Surrey, the land of the Kwantlen, Katzie, and Coquitlam and Tawasin First Nations. Let us start with a prayer. Holy One, as we gather in this space together, we know you're present with us. We are thankful to be together and that Jacqui is able to be with us today. We know that there are many who wanted to be here and who are not able to be with us. We ask for your blessing on them wherever they may be. We remember those in our communities of faith and our communities, wider communities, who are struggling with illness, those who have suffered loss. Silently, we name them in our hearts. We lift our concerns to you, Heavenly One, for our siblings across the world who are struggling with food security and who are affected by droughts, floods, and fires. We offer prayers for those living in the midst of conflict and war. At this time, we hold in our hearts the peoples of Ukraine and Israel and Palestine who face immeasurable loss and grief. We are reminded at this time and always of your call to love one another as you have loved us. Walk beside us, we pray. O God of all, hear us. In Christ's name, we pray. Amen. Back to you, Treena.
Thank you, Deborah. Well, welcome, Jacqui. It's such a privilege to have you among us again and to be blessed by your knowledge, your wisdom, and your experience. And so I'll just hand things over to you. You're muted.
How many years of Zoom and we still are muted, right? Thank you, everybody. I'm so glad to spend some time with you today. I am on the traditional unceded territory of the Lenni Lenape, from whom the Dutch Reformed Church bought Manhattan. And downtown, my husband and I bought an apartment downtown. So I am looking at the place where the East River and the Hudson River meet, not too far from Staten Island, the place where Ground Zero was and is, just enjoying the sun on my face, but also thinking about all the stories that are embedded in this place. I want to make sure that I have a chance today to push our conversation further, but also to feel like you are getting what you want from me. So I have some framing comments. I've been thinking about wilderness theology, and I want to do that. But I wondered, Treena, if it's okay to take a moment. Is it okay to take a moment to gather up hopes? Like if I was in the room with you and I said, what are you hoping that we'll make, what's the most important thing that we do in this time? Is that okay to take a few minutes?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Is
If folks want to put in the chat, or do you want to hear from people?
Whichever way feels like people will get it out the best.
Okay, so we'll leave it up to you. You can put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and speak. So what are your hopes for our time together today? Okay, people, you're not usually quiet. What's going on here?
What's going on?
I've got a hand up. My name is John.
Hi,
Jacqui, I
John.
appreciated so much what you did. I had agreed to be chair of our council before all this. When I got used to the job, I realized I have no vote. My job is to keep everything moving, and being impartial. And so first, I did send to all council members my impassioned record of your addresses to us, and no response. But I'm working on it. Secondly, we have had the pride flag up for years. We're getting very negative response and also a lot of positive response. And so we're dealing with that. It's vandalism, threatening anonymous email that Bible bearing Christians will come and teach us that we're worshiping Satan. So I come hopeful and a bit afraid and disconcerted. That's all. You don't have to solve that. I'm just checking in. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just reading the comments, they're hoping to reconnect with the experience, to reconnect with you, to feel inspired, and to hear more about how you share Middle Church out in the world and how you grew that community there, to help continue to deepen engagement in right relationship. Robin, go ahead. I can't see the hands raised necessarily, so just unmute yourselves.
Robin, yeah.
Okay. I'm hoping for hope. And actually more than just that, ways to share hope with others. Because actually I have a fair bit of hope of my own, but conveying that and sharing that with others. So
yeah. Okay, thank you. What else is going on?
Feeling refreshed.
Huh?
People want to feel refreshed, inspired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Jacqui, it's Graham. Nice to see you again. One of the things I think I'm hoping for is just you bring such a different energy than what I get to experience in my everyday life. And so just really, it's like sitting at your feet. And my hope is this time is available. So I'm glad that that's happening. And I'm just inspired by what you bring and how you share yourself and your faith.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Would it be good for me to talk and leave some rooms for Q&A then?
That sounds good.
Okay, who's going to keep my time?
I can do that. How long do you want to talk?
Maybe we have an hour, right?
Yeah.
Am I right with that? Yeah. Let me do 15 minutes of talk, 20 minutes of talk, and the rest Q&A. Does that feel good, everybody?
Sounds good.
All right. All right. First of all, I would like to invite you to take a breath with me. I'm sure you, like all of us with compassionate hearts, and we're in this work because that's how we're wired, have our antenna vibrating with the Israel Hamas sadness, and also the violence and the violence of the kind of discourse that's happening around it, right? That we almost can't help ourselves but to figure out who's right and who's wrong. We wonder if we can hold a complex thinking, and I hope we can. I hope we can. But I want to just kind of tell you that I've been thinking a lot about the wilderness. Maybe because I'm still placeless. You know, we still don't have a building back. We are on the back end of Jewish holidays. And those stories, which are our stories, the stories of the wandering Jewish people are our stories. And I've been thinking about what it's like to have a wilderness kind of theology, wilderness kind of faith. So I'll do a quick story tell about the stories that we hold so dear, that it's Joseph, who is a younger brother with a beautiful coat of many colors, or some translations say now a princess dress, who ends up in Pharaoh's world with gifts to use, and he flourishes there, he thrives there. And then those mean brothers who beat him up and left him for dead. We don't like the favorite kids sometimes, maybe especially not kids who wear princess dresses. I don't know. Come find him, they reconcile, they hug, they make up. And now all of Israel is in Egypt. They begin to flourish and prosper, and therefore threaten the status quo. Suddenly, the power of Pharaoh, over time, let's say, diminishes their rights, demands more from them, and now we have a free people who are enslaved by Pharaoh. They languish, they are heavy laden, they're burdened, they maybe don't have as much freedom to move about as they used to. Maybe their taxes are higher, maybe there are fences or barbed wire walls keeping them in and keeping others out. We can imagine the ways we can colonize the other if we have an opportunity. And there they are, becoming more and more desperate and destitute, and God, who loves them, hears their cries. And so sets out a kind of awkward speaking Moses to go do negotiations to get them free with Pharaoh. Let my people go. Pharaoh is not impressed with this person, this human. So God doubles down on God's intention for these people to be free, to be liberated, and sets plague upon plague upon the Pharaoh until finally he's bent and has to release them. Now, Indigenous Peoples Days recently behind us, and I'm a Black woman, so I'm thinking about what that was like for Pharaoh's economy to lose his free labor. And I picture, maybe because of the movie, the Cecil B. DeMille movie, I picture Pharaoh's head hanging down low, and he feels defeated, and his son is dead, and suddenly he's like, what, wait a minute, what's gonna happen if I let these people leave for real? One gathers up his horses, his chariots, pursues the people toward the Red Sea. And in the miracle of miracles, the sea opens and they part, and off they go to freedom. Except not so much, because it's rough out there in the wilderness. The wilderness is a rough place to be, right? So they are hungry. Why did you bring us out here? We could have at least had meat in the pots back home. God hears those cries, those mumblings, those murmurs, those criticisms, the doubt that's in the faith, the conflict between the dream of a promised land and the safety of back there, and makes a menu for them of manna and quail. That's a lot of love. They are thirsty. Why did you bring us out here? What? We're going to die of thirst. They complain to Moses. Moses complains to God. God says, look, take your staff, hit the rock, the water's going to come out. And it happens. Miracle of miracles. They don't have quite enough faith to believe God's got their back. They need some insurance. They build that golden calf just in case they need another God to take care of them. But wander through the wilderness they do. And it feels to me like we're in the wilderness right now. We're in the wilderness. Human beings are in the wilderness right now. We are literally, I've prayed for you so much. You were literally on fire. And some of the people down here in the lower, the global south to you, let's say, were like, what's going on with Canada? Our air quality is so bad. I'm like, what's going on with Canada? We all made this moment. We have all created an earth that is on fire. We've been on fire in the political processes in our well-to-do Western democracies, where immigration patterns and economic downturn have left us feeling vulnerable and anxious and therefore tight-fisted. Where are we, God, and where are you? The policing and racial politics of the United States of America, the mess at our southern border, meaning the desperate people who crawl over barbed wire in the river to get here, only to be met with disdain and frustration because resources feel scarce. And then there's the global context of the hottest of hot messes in so many places, most recently the Israel-Hamas clash, the violence that is just, we can't even describe. Babies beheaded, women raped, in the name of freedom. I think that we're in the wilderness. We just really are. And you and I, as people of faith and faith leaders, we have to figure out how do we be in this wilderness situation. And I'm thinking that we need a wilderness faith. And the stories of Israel moving through the desert, without temple, without a clear sense of where God is, and they make themselves a tabernacle or mishkan. They just finished celebrating their Festival of Booths, like, let's put this thing together and build it, and we can carry it with us, and God's presence will be with us in the wilderness, right? God's presence will be with us in the wilderness. God's presence will be with us in the wilderness. And how do we talk with God? How do we talk about God in the wilderness? Well, I think we need to have candor. We need to have some really kind of radical truth telling. How to be a human in these times is to be honest about it. It's hard. I'm sad. I'm frightened. My faith is wavering. I don't know what to say on Sunday morning. My children are asking questions that stump me, and I don't know if I can say, I don't know. I'm depressed. I'm eating too much. I'm drinking too much. I'm not sleeping well. The truth of the matter is that this is a time of trauma, and we are traumatized. The candid expression of that to our God in prayer, to our colleagues, family, and friends is what we need in the wilderness. Tell the truth about how you are and what you need. Why did you bring us out here? Why is the planet on fire? Those prophetic utterances of truth, I really believe, will make us free. We're taught when things are hard to buckle down and shoulder up. I think that's a mistake. The truth of our vulnerability will bring resources to us, people who love us, people who are also hurting, people who are sad, people who will say, me too, and let's make a way together. Wilderness God talk requires candor. I think the second piece of this is if we tell the truth, we're going to have conflict. And that's why we don't like to do it, because nice Christians don't fight, except Jesus kind of had a temple tantrum and called people broods of vipers, which I think was Aramaic cursing. I'm not sure, but I think so. Wherever two or more ideas exist, there's going to be conflict. Wherever two or more truths exist, there's going to be conflict. Conflict is needed as part of our wilderness theology, our wilderness God talk, to normalize conflict, to accept conflict as a spiritual gift, a spiritual practice. I'm not going to be afraid that you're not going to love me, like me. I'm not going to be afraid that you will leave me and not come back to church. I'm going to take a risk and tell the truth and expect that sometimes there will be conflict, and that the conflict is as good as the love, that the conflict was something that Jesus embraced. My family are the ones who are doing the will of God. You've heard it say, but I say, new visions contradict old ones. Two truths need to wrestle it out to get to a place of understanding. I think in the wilderness, we require conflict. If Israel hadn't told the truth about how afraid they were, hungry they were, thirsty they were, they wouldn't have taken the conflict to Moses, and Moses wouldn't have taken it to God, and they might have just languished. It was the utterance of the need that brought God's mercy, just like their cries for help brought God's mercy. So candor, conflict. I think the other thing that's required in the wilderness in these wild times is the sense of community. We're not in the desert by ourselves. We're not in the wilderness by ourselves. We were not liberated by ourselves. Israel wasn't liberated by herself, one person at a time. The whole company of Israel went wholesale out of Egypt with their stuff and their kids and their treasures, and they languished in the wilderness together. Generations dying off, but together they moved, old people, young people, in diversity across the wilderness. Community that is Ubuntu, you've heard me say, but I am who I am because you are who you are. Your surviving in the wilderness is my surviving in the wilderness. I need you. I need you to survive. We need each other to survive, to find the water, to cook the meats, to care for the children, to care for the elders, to make new patterns, to learn new skills, to stand up against hate speech when we're standing up for the vulnerable, like our queer family, to be bold, to be brave, to declare God is love. We need community to stand on the side of love. And finally, I think I've been thinking that these wild times, these wilderness times, require care. And I mean care for ourselves. That we have to have a gentle kindness toward ourselves, a love for ourselves, a tenderness, a compassion for ourselves, delight in the particularity of our own selves. I'm chatty when I'm nervous. I perspire when I'm afraid. I am not the best friend when I'm exhausted. I need 8 hours of sleep. To know yourself, to care for yourself, to give yourself what you need and not think of it as selfish, but think of it as resourcing your community because you resource yourself, because you're not exhausted. You're not going to throttle somebody when there's conflict. And because you're in a good space, you can speak the truth. You can be candid and love. The candor that might lead to conflict, which might lead to transformation for a whole community. The care that we give ourselves, all as part of how we'll be in these wilderness times, in these wild times, in these hot mess times. Candor as a demand for ourselves. Embracing conflict as a spiritual gift. Knowing that our community is part of us and caring for ourselves in these moments. That's what I've been thinking about. And I'd love to pause there, stop there, see my sleepy face. I did not sleep well last night. See what you might want to say about that and what else you might want to do. But that's just some reflections to put on the table as we get to some Q&A.
Thank you. So what we'll do this time is invite you to raise your hand if you want to ask a question, or you can also type it in the chat if you're not comfortable speaking on Zoom. I have you in participant view, so I'll be able to see the hands raised this time. Rian.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqui. So it's always so nice to hear someone in leadership just talking about vulnerability. I just wonder, like, what have you tried with your own community in hosting those conversations or making a container for those conversations? What have you tried and what have you found helpful?
Yeah, thank you for that, Rian. I think the first level of conversation is the way I've thought about my preaching lately in the last year, but maybe especially in the last 6 months, is less what am I declaring, but more what am I inviting them to consider with me. It's a little bit of a tone shift. I like declaring, by the way. It's fairly great to declare, but a little more, what if, what if? Saying things, Rian, like you are theologians too. Where's God showing up for you? How's God speaking to you? Really being very solicitous and invitational that we're having a conversation with God and I'm conducting the conversation, but we're all having it. I do that better when I'm off book. I hate reading my manuscript and not really looking at them. But girl got to do what a girl got to do. And sometimes you just have to preach that manuscript. I'm enjoying taking risks with them. And I'm enjoying a real play, a real creativity of we together are thinking about what faith is like in this season. What is wilderness faith? What is I did a sermon on what's it like, what if God's our dance partner, right? What if God needs us as much as we need God? Just a little bit of kind of creative imagination. And then setting more opportunities for them to talk to each other. We don't have as much space, but more Zoom conversations, more places for them to break up into smaller groups. Excuse me. And finally, with this Israel-Palestine thing, I just decided to set up 3 different conversations. One last night, one this morning, and one tonight, where they could come to a Zoom webinar, because I can't manage if everybody gets crazy and angry. But just a half hour of, here's how this is affecting me, here's how this is affecting a Jewish leader here, how this is affecting a Palestinian leader. And I think you all can set those kinds of tables, Leanne, without having to have the answers. You're saying, we're just going to talk about it and set some norms, and then just, set a table for theological wonderings, ethical wonderings that might help shape programming in the future, right? That might help shape a Bible study, but let people speak to each other in safe and brave ways is what I've been trying to do.
Thank you, Jacqui. John.
Jacqui, just to say, what
John.
you said most important to me was that to embrace the conflict. Now, in my situation on the council, I'd never been on council. I'd never been chair. I thought I could come in with a lot of red hot ideas. I told them all about Middle Collegiate Church. Let's do that. I love the idea of a vision should live and be reevaluated on a 3-year span. I love so many things. But it was like, if you weren't there, I couldn't convey the excitement. The problem that I see is that, and we spend 2 hours of our meetings keeping the lights on, paying the bills. And I'm just trying to move, and I've had a chance. I've written my first letter to the congregation. I'm saying that revitalization comes on the mission side. Declare who we are, get out there, say what you're doing, and people will come if you make a space for them. All things you said. So thank you. It's the embracing the conflict, because as chair, I'm aware of streams of conflict I didn't know before, and they bothered me, and I took sides right away. Now I got to let that go and live with it. And I may or may not be my great colleagues on council, great people. So I'm balancing all that. And finally, I've read the work of William Bridges on the wilderness, and he says there are 2 mistakes to make. One is to go back, and the other one is to try to get out too fast. And creativity comes in the wilderness. That's you got to try something new. Anyway, love this stuff. Oh, finally, is there a brochure? You have a huge brochure for Middle Collegiate. If I'm gonna, if could they be mailed or something?
There's two things. One, I owe you guys. I said to Amber finally, could you just tell them that my visioning process is just the ugliest document ever. It's 27 pages long, and that's not what they need. So I did not forget about you. I'm trying to clean that sucker up a little bit so it doesn't make you want to kill yourself. But I do have also, let me put in the chat here, John. Where is it? I have a, okay, I remember where I put it. I have our annual report is what I'm trying to get out of my mouth. And I think in a way, John, it's kind of instructive, it tells you what we said we were going to do, and then it tells you how did we do on it. Now, why is it that? Oh, I can get a word. Can I get a? Can I just mail this to you, Treena?
Yep.
It seems like
just email it and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. It seems like it's easier to grab it for email. Okay. Than for me to stick it in the chat myself. But I think if we, what I'd like to say is I feel like it's a very honest, this is what we said we would do. And then we did it. And maybe it helps you reverse engineer, John. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's fine. This is just great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get that to you.
And I think I'm through commenting now. I'm just going to listen. It's
Thanks,
great.
John.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, here it comes, Treena.
Perfect.
Okay.
Any other questions? Ryan, Tristan.
I'm just curious if you have tips on engaging folks, say on YouTube and in person. I'm just finding it a bit, I haven't even turned over the prayers of the people yet, because I'm really nervous about confidentiality and things. So I wonder if you have, I like your panel idea about, and I noticed you're saying Israel and Hamas. But I just wondered what, and I can ask, I know other folks in here have great technological knowledge and stuff, but I wonder what you're doing to engage people.
Yeah. On that particular issue, Ryan, or period?
I think like I'm always looking at anti-racism. I'm thinking about Palestine, just on more difficult things,
Yep.
and how to get a deeper engagement, I guess.
Yep. Yeah.
As someone who like I think I'm a control freak. Like I worry too much that we'll give the mic to the wrong person and they'll just ruin everything.
Well, and they might, right? So three things maybe quickly. One is in the tough spaces, in the tricky spaces, in the places where there's conflict, I think it's, if you're going to do something digital, a Zoom webinar is easier to manage than just a straight open Zoom. People have to register, so you know who they are. They can't be anonymous and be like, let me be like evil person and say mean things in the space. So their registration is like a step they have to take. The chat is enabled for host and participants, but they can't chat at each other usually. And so there's a kind of appropriate control, Ryan, right? Because we're not trying to have a war. We're trying to talk and learn and teach. So I like that idea. I like engagement like this. So like, this is awesome, but this is a trusting group. I think you can just put things on your page, your Instagram page, your YouTube channel, even your X, Twitter. That's a one-way engagement in a way. It looks like it's two-way, but it's really not. So you have some manageability there of, you can say, this is what I'm wrestling with. Like, softball tease it. What do you think, right? That's a question. And then you're finding out. And people will write to you and they will tell you exactly what the hell they think about it. But if you invite that, I think it's good. And, sometimes, Ryan, on those, like, let's say on Instagram particularly, right? Like, you can post something and someone comments back and you just heart it. So that's a response. You just saw it. But if it really is something you think a lot of people are thinking, that gives you a chance to play with that person. So you'd be like, well, actually, da-da-da-da, or thank you for that question or that criticism, and here's what I think. And I think that models what we want to be in the world, is people who are open to hear another person's point of view. Now, the other day, someone who I don't know, and they were wrong, said they were baiting me. You took all those comments down off your page. What is that? Where's your morals about taking down your stuff? Really, Miss Girl? If you put hate speech on my page, I'm taking it down. That's a rule. So Ryan, I think also you get to be your own kind of social media manager. What do you want your page to be like? Are you in the middle catching opinions? Are you doing editorial right on somebody else's? Some people just will share resources. This Palestinian person saying this Jewish person saying this, have at it, you're neutral. So you decide on your own kind of strategy and be consistent. And then people will know, when I come to Ryan, this is what I'm going to get from him, right? And that's a good thing. You build a reputation, builds a platform. And good people, we need to be saying things in the spaces where people are listening. And they are listening not just inside our churches, they're listening in the social space. So think about the sermon you want to be preaching in that space, and then I think preach it.
Thank you, Jacqui.
Thank you.
I put the annual report in the chat there, so if folks want to get it.
I'm going to send you one more thing, Treena, which is sort of like, how did we get to this annual report? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
the plan that we made to get us here, which is almost like the strategic planning thing you want, but prettier. And then I will not forget to get that to you guys. Just, you guys know my father died, that my father died since I saw you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, I didn't know that.
It's been, okay. Ooh. So this
Perfect.
thing I just put in the chat is the plan we made for 3 years.
Wonderful. Thank you. That'll be really helpful.
Yeah.
Pam Rocker had a question.
Hey, Pam.
Hey, Jacqui. It's so great to get to see you and hear from you. So I guess my question is this. I find that I think myself and a lot of ministry leaders that I am talking with feel a little bit torn, because sometimes in these conversations, like, I can really relate, and I feel like a lot of us in ministry can relate with just the kind of like collective trauma that's happening for so many folks.
Yeah.
At the same time, so we're in ministry with a lot of people who are deeply personally affected by, stuff like one of, ministry leader was just sharing about their rainbow flag being up and how that's causing, harassment and threats and stuff. And then yet there's other folks in our ministries who really, for whatever reason, they're not really affected by those things. They maybe are a little bit more privileged. This isn't something that's kind of coming across for them every single day, and feel kind of like a little bit like, why are we talking about this? Like, and so it's like, we can kind of have these conversations and we're all like, yes, yes, yes. But then I think ministry leaders struggle, like, how do we communicate like kind of the acuteness of this and what's happening, and how it's imperative for us to act when there's lots of other folks in our communities that are just kind of whistling along, and they're not bad, but they just maybe aren't personally affected in some of those ways. Does that make sense? And so how do we kind of have those conversations in love, but like, continue to have them, because one side wants us to kind of talk more and do more, and the other one's like, I don't understand what we're talking about all these things still. Yeah.
That's a really good question about culture, the culture of a denomination or the culture of a ministry context. It's a good question. I think what's coming up for me is, there's a corollary to that inside our congregations, right? Let's say the parent who has discovered that one of my colleagues just discovered that their boy really believes herself to be a girl. So that's a whole different level of, let's talk about trans, right? That's right here in my bosom of my heart, like my own baby, wrestling with that, versus let's say one of you that's in an urban context where the trans conversation is happening a lot, right? Or one of you that's in a rural context where nobody's working on that. We're not ready to work on that. So that's that diversity of what is acute, right? Pam, what is essential? What is breaking my heart? And what is, we've already done the work on that, right? Or I'm never gonna do the work on that. Thank you, right? All of those different places are authentic places on a journey. And you're not saying this, but I'm saying there can be pressure to be a certain place on the journey, political pressure, popularity pressure. You're not talking about that in your context? Well, it hasn't come up yet, right? Well, what's wrong with you? Type of pressure. And I wonder, if we could think that a fiercely loving community can be dynamic enough, plastic enough, flexible enough to hold those different places on the journey, if you set that intention together, that might mean, Pam, sometime breaking into cohorts, like I'm going to do this conference I'm doing this. Oh, Susan's coming to do conflict with you. I know her. I'm doing this conference in April that I want you all to come to, right? Digitally, making you a big ticket or fly to New York. And I make a panel, let's say, of, about human sexuality. And someone's going to talk about the right to abortion care, and someone's going to talk about, I don't know, I'm making stuff about pansexuality, or someone's going to talk about what it means to still be oppressed as a queer person in a straight world. Every one of those people is where they are on a particular journey. And when they speak, how you respond to it is because of where you are in a particular journey. And my job as I set that table is to say, this place is plastic enough for us to be here together, even though we have different experiences. I think that our councils, our conferences, our denominations need some work, Pam, that's my big wind up to say, need some work on setting a table that's diverse. Not just diverse about how we look ethnically, but our theological orientation, our childhood story, everything that makes you you and makes me me, that makes us have a different reaction, Pam, to what's happening in the world. But also your context is full of all the people that are as diverse as you and I are having a reaction. And I think we could do some training around that better. And I think we could be more intentional about acknowledging that in a room full of white people that are 40, they're all so very different. And that's a different kind of diversity training than maybe we get to. But I think it's important that you as clergy feel safe enough in a brave environment that acknowledges just how different you are. Is that resonating with you, what I'm saying, Pam?
I think so. I know it's super layered. Yeah, I think so. And I think it's just, I guess I think about how we invite people along who don't have those same experiences, but we want and need their engagement, like accepting where they're at, but then the invitation to join us. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. So I want to say back to you, yes, that's our hope. And, as a consultant to congregations, you're also asking what's the readiness level. So even if you're totally 100% invitational, Pam, and make the safe and brave space for people to come along, some people are just not ready. They're not ready to go to the place you are already at. And I wonder how you keep moving anyway. Like, let's go back to wilderness. How do we keep moving anyway toward the promised land when everybody's not ready to go? And is that okay? We don't want to play to the lowest, or let me say, we don't want all of our work to be towards the non-ready people. We're not ready. We can't have this talk yet. We can't do this work yet. We're not ready. Some of us are just going to have to be early adapters, Pam, and get out there and be like, yes, girl, this is what we're doing. And look around, look back and go, yeah, they're still not ready. But part of us are going to go so we can get ready. I hope that encourages you. I'm trying to encourage you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jacqui. Dave.
Hey, Jacqui.
Hi.
Thank you. I was just thinking about the moment you used the word wilderness and then wildness, and now talking about diverse voices, thinking about a reflection from John Ralston saw years ago, that this is what some of us call a place that other people live in. Like there's other, like in Canada, what we call a wilderness has a whole bunch of people who know how to live there already and love it. They call it home, but in you know, my pasty whiteness call it wilderness because I'm scared of it, right? And don't have the skills. So just that to say, not a critique on the word wilderness, but to say, for the first time I thought, oh, if we're in a wilderness time, I wonder who else lives here already. And then about diverse voices, I'm thinking we need like a bibliography, and I'm not just talking written bibliography, but a bibliography of wilderness walkers, people who are already doing this well, or who have lived through wilderness time and come out. Because the stories it seems that we're still telling are the, you know, stories of A-type personalities who have the answers and know how to fix things. And we're still telling those stories and lifting those people up and lifting those organizations up. But I'd rather us as colleagues and both lay and ordered ministry have resource list of all the wilderness stories and who already knows some of the habits of wilderness. Not answer oriented, who lives there more comfortably than we're used to, who has been able to look around and say, I didn't have an answer for 5 years, but here's what we did while we were waiting. You know, for
that's good.
Who's got the habit? So you know, if there's a way to lift up for each other a list of wilderness experiences that others have had, or the people whose voices will help in the wilderness. And just I was thinking about the ancient voices about in the wilderness that already know, like Moses married Zipporah, right? And she was from in the wilderness. So he hooked into the wilderness voice there. And I'm just wondering, it's not also to look at the ancient voices within ourselves, because I think many of us have a capacity for wilderness. We just have forgotten what that capacity is. So,
well, Dave, that was rich. I love that playing in the wilderness thing, and it made me think about the conversation I was just having, you know, with Pam. Like some of what Pam is saying, I think, is some of us are over here in the wilderness, certain wildernesses, having these conversations, doing this work, and you know, colleagues are not ready to go there. That just is pinging my imagination. One person's wilderness is another person's safe space, is another thing that's pinging my imagination. I love that you're saying that we have ancient, I'm going to say archetypal wisdom for how to survive in the wilderness, because we did. All of us come from caves in Africa, right? And survived fireless, dark, you know, narrow escapes, I think, of the wild in our ancestry way back then. So yeah, let's like make a mishkan, make a tabernacle in the wilderness, in which we're curating what we know, Dave, what our questions are, and asking each other, what do you got for me here, you know? And James Cone, maybe, I'm thinking about a quote, you know, meeting God in the wilderness. There's like a sense of not wanting to rush out of there so that the wilderness can teach us. Cheryl Strayed's book, Wild, right? That was a wild book, but can we dwell? Can we inhabit? Can we remain in the wilderness long enough for it to do what it's supposed to do to us, in and through us? I'm just playing with your metaphor there some more, Dave. Thank you.
We probably have time for one more question. Wow, you're a quiet group today. This is very unusual for the PMR Town Hall, I gotta say. Well, I have a question. Tell us about your event in April.
Yeah, I'm going to talk and then ask you to stay, so I'll put it in the chat for you. It's this is like our 18th conference, I think, And it's going to be April 28 to 30, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. These conferences were at one point called Revolutionary Love, like we did that for 5-6 years. And one time it was the Power Stories, we did that for 5 or 6 years. And now we're at Freedom Rising, right? With how do we make freedom rise? But the conference title is You Move the World. You Move the World. The first day we're going to try to do some work on, like, what is it like to be a well, whole person in these times. There'll be some conversations on grief. There'll be conversations on body work and on soul care, well care, spiritual practices. I always say that I'm not a person that sits still, because I don't, but there'll be some stillness here and some joy, some dance, some play. The second day is, there it goes. The second day is Move. So that's a day where we're inviting people to come hang out with activists on climate, on water, on resource sharing, on poverty, on immigration, on body autonomy, on anti-racist practices, on Indigenous support, like the things that are the hot things that we're worried about. We're gonna have some great speakers that day, but also workshops and connections so we can work on a community together that's doing this work. The third day is the world, and that's our day of inspiration. Worship will be cirque to worship. It'll be playful and joyful and fun with lots of different kinds of music, but also like Simranjeet Singh is coming that day, and Eve Ensler, who's now V, is coming that day. So we'll be listening for wisdom that is not just Christian, but that is tied together in love. And how can we leave that place tying together ourself, our movement building, and a kind of ability to go home and inspire others to be in this movement for love and justice. I will have a special ticket price for you. We're going to do digital tickets because it will really be a hybrid, but also anybody who wants to come to New York, I am ready to help you get there. So I'll make sure that I send all that stuff to Treena.
That sounds fabulous. Wonderful.
It's going to be amazing.
Well, I'm gonna draw our time to a close, and then, as always, if folks want to hang out a bit afterwards, I'll be around, and maybe Jacqui can hang around for a minute or two. But Jacqui, I'm wondering if you would say a closing prayer for us.
I will. I'd be so happy to do that. Can you guys pray with your eyes open for me this time? Look in the, pick a face to focus on, or the name of somebody, Bob or Jerry, someone you know. And just remember that that face, that person is created a little less than God, the psalmist says. That face is created awesomely and wonderfully in God's image. That person hosts the divine, is a tabernacle for the divine. So as we close in prayer, think about sending light to them, to their body, to their face, to their countenance. And think about the reflection coming back to you. They see you. They see your beauty and your divinity. You see their beauty and their divinity. And God delights in this recognition. So I pray every face that we meet along the way, we see God right there saying hello. And what are we going to do together about the world? God bless you. Amen.
And God bless you, Jacqui. Thanks.
God bless you guys. I'm so glad to see you.
Thanks, everybody. And I do just want to highlight what Michelle put in the chat about the conflict workshop that's coming up. So if you're able to tune in for that, that would be great, or go to Calgary, even better. Have a good week, everyone. Our next town hall will be on November 8th, and it's going to focus on the remit. It's going to be shared with both regions, and really encourage you to have your leadership come out and hear about the remit, because it'll be a great learning opportunity. and a reminder that your congregations need to vote on that. The numbers are very low, so we're hoping to get those numbers up and moving. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jacqui, and we'll just leave your mic open if you want to say something or do something on the way out.
Thank you, everybody. I'm so
Thanks,
happy to know you're in the world. Be well, okay? I'm your sister down south. I won't forget about you, okay?
Thanks, Jacqui. That was wonderful.